Hello, Drawing 2. Welcome to today's introduction to our color unit, the next unit in this course. Welcome to today where we're going to talk about the element of color. We're going to talk about the color wheel. We're going to talk about some of the organization and terms associated with color and color schemes. And then we're going to have our first practice introduced today, our first practice assignment. We're going to have 3 practice assignments for this unit and then the final. So yeah, we're going to introduce the first one today. So let me just get right into the slides here. So yeah, Drawing 2. Color with me, Mr. Wright. Now this YouTube video right here, and you see it repeated again in the next slide. I think it's the same one. Yeah. If you follow that link, it goes to the KQ Ed video over color, which really just says a lot of the same things I say here, but quicker and with cooler music and like a fast slideshow of like all sorts of really cool art associated with the element of color. Sorry, I'm gonna grab my water here. Sorry. Yeah, lots of good stuff associated with the element of color. So yeah, I don't know. Check out the video. It's fun. It's cool. I might have y'all do homework at some point on the videos. Haven't done it yet though, so we'll see. So first off, let's talk about what color is. Color is a reflection of light off an object or on an object. It's light hitting an object. And as most of you have probably heard, this is a summation of the science of it. It's not exactly, but all the colors are absorbed by the object except for the one that bounces back into your eyes. Basically, it bounces off, and the wavelength that comes back to you is the one that bounced off of the object and tells you its color. And we only see those things because of the muscles in our eyes and some of the receptors telling us, which wavelengths of things, so that we are bouncing off of it, so we see the difference, so that we know, bright toxic red frog, don't eat that. Nice boring brown cow, eat that, right? Those kind of things. That's why we have that adaptation. That's why we have that. Again, I'm not an anthropologist, but I'm summarizing how that works. But it's all because of muscles in our eyes, and it's very important if you want to recreate the world that you learn how to manipulate these wavelengths and play with color. Yeah. So light is. Or color is light bouncing off of an object, and the best way to think of it too is that light, when it's all together, it's a bright white pigment. Don't get me into black being all the colors mixed together, CMYK and all that stuff. That has to do with printing. We're talking about light, not pigment per se. We're talking about light. And so a white ray of light, pure light, when you separate it, you get the color spectrum or the rainbow that gives you all the different range of colors within our visible spectrum. If you convert that into a circle, you get the color wheel, which was invented. Does anybody know? I usually ask. Oh, it's Isaac Newton, inventor of lots of cool stuff, including gravity. Apparently, also the color wheel and Fig Newtons. Not really. He didn't invent those. Anyway, the 3 categories for the color wheel are as follows: primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. You can read that on here. What makes them primary? Why are they primary? Well, good answer, because you can't mix them. That's why red, yellow, and blue are the primary colors, because you can't mix 2 colors to get red. You can't mix 2 colors to get blue. You can't mix 2 colors to get yellow, and yet you mix them to get all the other colors. That's what makes them primary. Also, I always think supposition here, scientific supposition, that must mean that those are the 3 receptors in our eyes, right? Because that's how. Right, that would make sense. So 3 receptors, and when you see other colors, it's because multiple receptors going off. Maybe, I don't know. Basically, how I picture it in my head. But in any case, that's the primary colors. Secondary colors are violet, green, and orange. You get those by mixing 2 primary colors: red and yellow, orange, red and blue, violet or purple. I mostly say purple. Blue and yellow is green. Yeah, so those are your secondary colors, and then a tertiary color is the 3rd level. Sometimes it's called intermediate, but I like tertiary because it sounds like turd. But tertiary colors are when you mix a primary with its adjacent secondary. So you can mix blue with green or violet, red with violet or orange, yellow with orange or green. And when you mix those, if you mix blue and green, you get blue green. If you mix red and violet, you get red violet. So it's a primary first, secondary second. That's your tertiary colors. Now, teal, hot pink, all those other things that are not right here on the basic 12, they're somewhere in between. They're mixtures of other colors that have been given proprietary names. Usually Crayola patented that color name or whatever, or it's related to a stone that it looks like or whatever, right? But there are other names for other colors. Side note, a complementary color is a color that's opposite on the color wheel. We'll talk about that again later. So that is blue and the non-adjacent secondary, blue and orange, right? It's what's opposite on the color wheel. So purple is opposite yellow, blue is yellow opposite orange, red is opposite green. Those are kind of your basic ones, one primary, one secondary. And if you mix a primary with its complement, which is the non-adjacent secondary, you get brown, right? And that's where browns are on the color wheel, is somewhere in the middle, right? They're mixtures of colors that aren't right next to each other. Okay, we'll get more into that later, but yeah, basically just remember primary, secondary, and primary red, yellow, blue. Secondary is mixing those, and a tertiary is mixing a secondary and a primary. Okay, so yeah. Oh, I did have a slide about Isaac Newton inventing this in 1666. Same year as I think the plague and the big fire in London and lots of fun stuff like that. But yeah, it's a pretty synonymous spectrum of 12 colors that we set up in a circle that he first wrote. He didn't invent it. He just put it down in this way, right? The spectrum was already there. Now, in any case, properties of color. Properties of color include hue, value, and intensity. Those are at least the ones I'm going to give you. Of course, there's others. Hue is the name of the color according to where it is on the color wheel. So that's blue. Blue is the hue, or red is the hue, or pink is the hue, or teal is the hue, or aquamarine is the hue, whatever. It's the name of the color, and usually it's that color where it is on the spectrum, right? So it can't be in other places. Like you can't have two totally different colors. They have to be in the relative same place on the circle. Okay, that's the hue. Value is the relative lightness or darkness of that hue. Okay, this is tricky because a lot of students are taught about value, including in my class, by drawing with whites, blacks, and grays. But the reality is the value also applies to color. It's the same reason that you can see all these folds in my shirt. It's kind of a light green, like beigey green shirt, but you see the different colors because that beige, where there's less light hitting it, is a little bit darker, right? Where there's more light hitting it is a little bit lighter. So even though if I was wearing a red shirt, it'd be a lot easier. Even though the ink in the shirt is the same ink, depending on how much light is hitting it, it changes in value, right? So that's a value change within a hue, okay? Now, if you really like red in general has a different value than yellow, but now you're talking about also differences in hue, but you can change the value of one single hue as well. The same red, lighter or darker, changes the value of the hue. Okay, anyway. Intensity or saturation, sometimes it's called chroma, sometimes it's called brightness, whatever you want to say. It's just how pure the color is. It's how much is on it, so it's like as opaque as possible, it's as intense as possible. It's somehow different than value because you think of it less like the same purple with more white or more black to make it lighter or darker, and it's more like hot pink versus pastel pink versus regular pink, right? That's kind of how intensity works. And it does change its place on the color spectrum sometimes, I think, personally, and it changes the value as well. So this is like a difference in value. This is a difference in intensity. Also with value, I did want to point out one little thing. If you add after you add white to a color, it's called a tint. If you add black to a color, it's called a shade. If you add gray to a color, it's a totally different thing, and it's a tone, right? So, yeah, if you ever make a color brighter by adding white, don't make it darker by adding black. What you do is you add more of the original color to darken it back up. Anyway, side note there. Okay, anyway, color schemes. Color schemes are as follows. These are different than color wheel organizational categories. These are actual schemes. So first off, achromatic. That means not color. Atypical means not typical. Chroma means color. Achromatic means no color. Okay, this is black, white, and gray. So black and white. Sometimes people include browns and stuff in this, or neutrals. It's the word I use for that. But I separate it. But just so you know, sometimes people call browns achromatic because they're not a color wheel color, but I tend to make it where achromatic is black, white, and gray. Okay, monochromatic means the same hue, but you change the value. And I guess the intensity too, sort of, although that can change the hue, like I said, so I don't know. Basically, the variation in value makes it where you can have, the shades or tints of a color, the whites added or the blacks added, and use the same color, black and white, and get a full, visible drawing. It's basically like a black and white drawing, but instead of black and white, you're really kind of thinking about blue and white, blue and black, whatever, right? You add one color in there, and it just so you can see a fully developed drawing or painting, but it's only with one color, one hue of a color, and then you add blacks or whites to change it. Although with some of our practice, I'm not going to let you add blacks and whites. Although for your value scale, you use blacks and whites. Anyway, monochromatic, one color or one hue with different value added, right? More black, more white, whatever, to change the lightness or darkness of it. That's monochromatic. Polychromatic is just a color scheme where basically lots of colors are there. Okay, so lots of these other color schemes fit into the polychromatic scheme. It's many colors or variation. Basically, I say if it's three or more, it's polychromatic. Under the polychromatic umbrella, you have analogous colors. Analogous colors, they're actually the colors that we tend to call like matching, right? They kind of fit together. They are adjacent to each other on the color wheel, meaning they're next to each other. They're like a fan, right? So you've got red, orange, and yellow. You've got blue, purple, and green, right? These are basically the warm colors versus the cool colors. And we call them warm because they look like fire, right? That's what red, yellow, and orange are. And we call cool colors like blue and green, we call them cool because they're like water or ice or a storm, right? They're more cool. And also the vibe, like warm colors kind of tend to be more intense, more active. Cool colors tend to be more like relaxed, calm, blue, or sad, feeling the blues. In any case, yeah, that is analogous colors. I've heard too, how everybody here knows probably that if you wear a black shirt versus a white shirt, that the black shirt gets hotter when the sun is shining down real bright on it. Well, apparently the same thing happens too with if you're wearing a red shirt, it gets warmer than if you're wearing a blue shirt. I don't know if that's true, but I've heard that before. So go outside, test it one of these bright, nice spring-ish, almost spring days. Okay, anyway. After analogous color, we have complementary color, which I've already talked a little bit about. These are colors that are across from each other on the color wheel. So we have red and green, blue and orange, and then the one that's not on the slide, purple and yellow, or violet and yellow, whatever you want to say. And then there's also ones for the tertiaries and all that kind of stuff too. Now, ironically, even though this is complementary, also note that it's complementary, not complement, and they're opposite each other, so it seems kind of opposite of complement. They actually, in my opinion, they don't often go together well. They go together in this sort of intense, uncomfortable way, which is why I think we tend to use them for festive occasions. We tend to use complementary colors also when we really need to see what's going on. So like in sports, right, we have the athletes wear really contrasty outfits, right? So contrasting meanings as opposite as possible, and complementary colors have the most contrast out of all the color relationships because they're so opposite each other. So when we see this very contrasted outfit and then the other team is wearing a different highly contrasted outfit, we can really tell which team is which and what they're doing. We can see really well, but it also just gives us this intensity vibe, right? It lets us feel like more movement. Now, I will say I've literally read though, if you take like a bright red cube or a bright red square and a bright green square and put them right next to each other, it'll actually look like they're like running into each other, right? But they actually have a movement. I think it's called kinesthetic empathy. It actually is like an intensity of friction between the two. But you can reduce that and get a more pleasant complementary color scheme, like if you wear like a pastel, right? So you can wear a pastel purple with a pastel yellow, and it won't be quite so vibrant and intense, right? But in any case, yeah, we have this tendency to see complementary colors as more active. Now, triadic color schemes, these are basically, there's lots of things that fit under this. They're schemes that make a triangle on the color wheel, which basically also means that they're primary or secondary color schemes. Even though primary and secondary are categories, the scheme of triadic kind of fits the same. And yeah, so you've got your red, yellow, blue, you've got your purple, green, orange. Now, as far as the different uses of them, the analogy I like to point out if you ask yourself in like a fantasy realm, in comic books or Marvel, who wears red, yellow, and blue? First one that should come to mind if you think about like DC, Superman. Superman wears red, yellow, blue. Iron Man is red and yellow. Spider-Man is blue and red. Captain America is blue and red and white. Right? You will notice a tendency for those guys, the good guys, superheroes, to be in red, yellow, or blue. Now, if I ask you who wears green, orange, and purple, probably the first person to come to your mind is the Joker, right? Or the Hobgoblin, or Dr. Demento. I don't remember all these superheroes, but yeah, basically the bad guys tend to wear secondary colors, and the good guys tend to wear primary colors. That is because there is an inherent sense of comfort and solidity and stability to primary colors, and there's an inherent sense of crazy or discomfort or unpleasantness. Also, you think about Halloween, it's always like witches with green skin and orange socks and purple hair, right? It's all just like it has to do with like being a little disconcerted or uncomfortable, and that's just a part of the use of those colors, so you can take advantage of it. Mondrian here, using primary colors, literally thought it would add like world peace and stuff, because it was so balanced and so peaceful, right? And so, there's varying ways of using these color schemes. Now, to cover the last one, neutrals are grays and browns, sometimes earthy greens, basically the things that are colors, but they're not on the color wheel. I call those neutrals. And again, you get browns by mixing complements, right? Red and green, blue and orange, yellow and purple. That's how you get browns. The grays that have like a warm gray or a cool gray can be a neutral if it's got a little blue, a little red. Greens that are kind of brownish, stuff like that. Those are neutrals. Okay, and honestly, most of the world is made up with neutrals. That's why we don't walk around with this like brilliant color spectrum around us all the time. It would add crazy emotions, apparently, if you're looking at all the primaries and secondaries. Any case, a palette, just a fun little bonus side note here, a palette used to just be a word for a board, and it was the board specifically that painters would use a board to put their colors on so that they can mix small amounts and keep it consistent and just kind of pull from within. They didn't have to be busting out in the bottle all the time. They would put out all their pigments and be able to work really quickly off of a palette. That word palette just means board. But now it's also become a word we use for the color palette of a painting. What were the colors on the board that were used in the painting? So if painting is all reds, blues, and yellows, that's the color palette. If a painter only ever uses secondary colors, that's his color palette. If he always uses yellow, blue, and orange, that's his color palette, right? Whatever you want to say. It's just the range, I think it's the same thing they use when you like go to do color schemes in your house and stuff. Those are palettes. So yeah, in any case, it can be a range of colors. It's the board. That's where we get all that word. Okay, now that's enough vocab and rundown of the element of art. What's your homework? What's your practice number one? What you're going to do for your homework, just to lay it out here from the beginning and listen to all this to the end before you start doing stuff. You're going to create a series of 4 8-box value scales. If you haven't done a value scale, you should look that up and figure out what it is. You definitely should have done it in drawing 1. It basically is just a set of boxes that helps you learn about the darkest colors you can get to the lightest. Typically, it's something you do when you're doing a new black and white medium, or if you're like switching to white chalk on black paper or something like that. But it can also work with colors to help you get the hang of how to make tints and shades, or how to blend new colors and all that kind of stuff. So that's what you're going to do. It's a set of boxes to help you get a range of colors or values that you're going to get out of a particular medium. It's the beginning of practice, right? It's not even very creative practice. It's helping you understand the material. What you're going to need to do is get your watercolor paper out. If you have 9x12 watercolor paper, great. Just start with that. If you only had watercolor paper in the 18x12 sheets or bigger, 24x18, cut it down to 9x12, or cut out a 9x12 section of one. And get ready for that. You're going to, I always suggest this next part, you don't have to do this exactly this way, but it's a good, easy way to do it. Trace a ruler across the width, so the 9-inch, the short side, go across it, or the short length, go across it. It's the width of the paper though. You're going to trace it 4 times. Trace a ruler. So boom, 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 boom. you're going to have 4 bars going across your paper in this. Then measure each inch as a box of the same value or color. So basically measure each inch, once you trace the ruler once to get a bar, measure each inch, draw down. So then you have a set of 9 boxes. It's a 9-inch wide paper, each inch, 9 boxes going across. 9 boxes are going across will be the full width. You can use all 9. If you want to go past 8, you want to get a full 9 boxes, that's great. But if you want to just leave the first or last one blank, that's fine too. So once you've got your paper set up with, basically it's going to look like these. There's going to be 4 of these sets of 9 boxes. These have 10, but yeah, yours will have 9. Then you're going to take the pastels. I say start with pastels. You can start with watercolor if you want. You're going to take the pastels and you're going to pick one color and you're going to go from light to dark. And the best way I always kind of say to do this is get out your black, white, and red, or black, white, and blue, whatever color you choose, black, white, and the color you choose. Put the color basically in the middle. So it's going to be like the 4th or 5th box if you're making 8 boxes, right? If it's a darker color, go to, closer maybe to the 4th box, a light one to the 5th box, but it depends on which direction you're going. Basically, if it's darker, go to the dark side. If it's lighter, go to the light side. But you're going to put it somewhere in the middle. Then just to go towards a dark side, whichever direction. It doesn't matter. You can start with light on the left and go to dark, or start with dark on the right and go to light, whatever, I don't care. But if you start in the middle, add a little bit of black to your color so that you get your first shade, just a little bit, mostly the color, just a little bit darker. Then go to the next one, add a little bit more black, a little bit darker version, right, of that same color. And then so on and so forth until you get to, ideally, you'll have a nice even spacing until the last box is solid black. Okay, then you're going to do the opposite on the other side. Add a little bit of white, so it's a little bit lighter than your middle color. Then add a little more, so it's a little lighter than that, blah, blah, so on, until you get to a solid white box at the end. But actually, I would say if you're going to leave the last box blank, make that the light side, then just leave that to plain white. Maybe, I don't know. Play with it though, but play with the black, white, and your color. Okay, then I want you to do, this one's a little trickier, a complementary blend. Okay, so complementary blend is you're going to get the red and the green. Okay, on one end, draw the red box. On the other end, draw the green box, green and red. Okay, complementary colors. Then let's start with the green side. Okay, add a little bit of red, so it's getting a little redder. Mostly green, a little red. Then add a little more, so it's getting more like 70% green, 30% red. Then a little more red, then a little more red, until in the middle, so the 4th or 5th box, you've got 50% green and 50% red. And then you're going to start switching it. So there's a little more red than green, then a little more red than green, then a little more until the very last box, which is going to be solid red, right? Also, it's very important here. I want you to try your best to keep the boxes all the same value or the same color within that box. So it's a really nice graduated value scale. So that's what we call this. It's not a gradient. It's not a smooth blend. It's a solid singular box blend. Okay, repeat the process with watercolors. So, and do that with different colors. That's what I recommend. Do all different colors. So one regular blend of a color from light to dark, and then one complementary blend in pastel, and then the same thing in watercolor. One watercolor, same color, light to dark, one watercolor, complementary blend. So 4 total value scales. Here's a really ugly version of what that should look like. And this isn't everything you should do. And see, what I don't do this graduated smooth blend thing. If you want to do that on your own, that's actually great. I would love for you to do that and get more practice. But I want you to really focus on boxes. Do notice this last one, 3 asterisks here. Make it all a lot prettier than my little example page here. But I did this many years ago, and so I thought it'd be good for you to see. So yeah, basically this is what you're going to see. One monochromatic in pastel, one color dark to light, one complementary in pastel, yeah, complementary colors, and then one monochromatic in watercolor, one complementary in watercolor. So yeah, 4 total. Now I do want to say, if you only have one, if you only have your pastels, you can just do 4, do more and use different colors. Just do like 4 scales that are all pastels, but make sure you use all different colors. I would also, if you're going to do that, if you're going to use all one material for sure, and then even if you don't, it's probably good practice for you to do a black and white gradient. So gradient value scale would be a nice smooth transition, or you could do graduated boxes. I don't really care, but try a black and white one in addition to your color ones. But basically, these right here, these are the 4 that are going to be required for the assignment. Okay, 4 value scales, 2 in watercolor, 2 in pastel, and then yeah, all within this monochromatic complementary for each material. Okay, might be good to practice black and white. Just do different colors if you only have the same material. Make them all prettier than this example. Make them look a little more like this, even though this was a computer. Try. Okay, this was just a wham bam quick thing. Okay, that's it. So this first practice is going to be due in a few days. Look for the assignment on Canvas. Posted hopefully quickly after this video. Yeah, for sure, pretty quick with an announcement or whatever. Look for the due date for your value scales. Then you will notice in that slideshow, if you've opened it up on your own, it continues for practice 2. That same slideshow we were just looking at, it has more slides that continue into chapter 2, or not chapter 2, right? Same unit on color, but it's practice number 2 starting after that value scale slide. It's looking at drawing some fruit and stuff for practice 2. So yeah, I'll record that video. That one will have some demos on how to draw with chalk pastel. And you can use a lot of the techniques for chalk pastel, take that to watercolor, take it to oil pastel, whatever you want to do. But it was a quick way to get a demo in. Now, that's it. Okay, that's the video for practice 1, introducing the element of color. Look for the video about pastel and watercolor, digging a little more into those materials, and practice number 2 to come soon. Thank you. Have a good one.